Folks, welcome to the archived podcast and YouTube channel. My name is Adam from Northside Golf here in Everton Park, Brisbane, Australia, and my co-host joining me from Manchester in the UK, Pat. Pat, how are you?
Adam, thank you for having me on your show. I am ready to fire off some spicy takes. How are you today?
I am good. It's summer here. It's dry, it's hot. Not the case for you.
No, I can absolutely guarantee you that anyone from your side of the Pacific Ocean would absolutely detest being here at the moment. So far, it's rained every day in the UK, but weirdly, Manchester has actually missed the worst of it, which normally we are the victims more often than not. So that's something to hold on to.
Right. Okay. Well, I wish you dry thoughts and hope that rain clears soon so you can get out on the course. Pat, Archived is a project that is really looking to explore the idea of in golf, tradition is dead, but long live golf. It's about disruption. It's about the disruptors. And, golf is a sport where over decades, if not centuries, of course, we've been told certain things. We've been given dress codes. We've been allocated member fees. There's been unwritten rules about who belongs and who doesn't belong. But something's shifted, and I felt that as a newcomer to golf during COVID, and for those that have been in it longer than me, I've heard from them that things have shifted, and so we're going to talk about this idea of a bit of a great golf rebellion going on, where it started, who's driving it, and why we should be excited. The archived podcast and YouTube channel is going to evolve over the coming months. You and I are going to have many sessions together. We're going to review majors this year. I'm also going to do deep dive one-on-ones with brand partners that I associate with. And look, that's no better place to start than talking about you and having you introduce yourself and Concrete Links Co. So I'm going to give you the mic, Pat. Who are you? What do you do? What's Concrete Links? Where did it come from?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's easier to just sort of go back to the start. I'm a hairdresser by trade. Um, I own a salon in central Manchester. I used to play when I was a kid, and sort of as college hit, got into skateboarding and metal. And I know that's very similar to you. And then I went to university, left university, went into full time work, and then when I opened my first business, my partner at the time basically said I'm not a really nice person to be around. All I was doing was working, and despite being a football fan, that's soccer to everywhere else in the world, but it's football. I decided that it would be better to um, play a sport that I knew I was half decent at. Um, and I think that's really where the obsession started. Uh, I started Concrete Links Co. in 2023, at the start of 23. That was kind of the idea and the inception time of it. There was a lot of development, and historically, I'm kind of a build a plane while it's in the air kind of guy. So started out as a white label company, um, which from an inventory perspective was great. It allowed us to kind of maintain inventory and not sort of overspend on manufacturing. But as we scaled, sort of the back end of last year, after we built a decent enough community to do it with some conviction, I sort of moved into the job pretty much full time. Uh, and we've started sourcing sort of suppliers and manufacturers from Europe, from Asia, and we're sort of essentially looking to bridge the style gap for golfers. We're a golf style meets lifestyle brand. Um, at this particular point in time, not the most original. Um, However, we feel that we've got like a really clear brand identity and brand aesthetic. And whilst a lot of places and companies maybe claim to not take themselves too seriously. We've got evidence of that is on the contrary, and we're just here for a good time.
So, Pat, can you give me a bit of a time frame as to how many years you've been into golf?
So it was about three. It was 3 years when I was like 14, 15, and 16, and then there was like a big hiatus. I was sort of 31, 32 when I sort of started thinking about playing the game again, and it was about 2018 that I picked it back up. So not too dissimilar to you. Bit of time off from the game for me, and then kind of got back into it, and then COVID hit really, and that was really gutting because I
Yeah,
annoyingly I got into it at the end of a year where the UK had a very uncharacteristically hot summer. The courses were firm and fast and burnt out pretty much everywhere you went. And then the following winter and autumn, when I got into it, it just rained and rained and rained. And so COVID hit. I think every golfer was pretty devastated during that period of time because for them it's the social aspect, it's the chance to meet friends and stretch their legs. And I think sometimes people underestimate how important it is to not touch your phone for what can be 4 or 5 hours and just kind of like immerse yourself in being outdoors and having grass beneath your feet. Even though that's kind of shifting, isn't it? We see a lot of like indoor sim spots cropping up as we've got an amazing partnership with T Club and beyond. And it's just an amazing sport to me. So yeah, I would probably say I really got back into it back in 2018.
so the first question or topic I want us to lead with is around when did we first notice golf changing? And golf changing could mean many different things, right? I mean, I've only really been into golf probably 3 years, and just in the last 3 years, I've felt that there's been sort of a monumental shift. And the different leagues and tours, of course, have brought the idea of different into our thinking of golf. But in sort of somewhat the business that you and I are in around apparel and fashion, even though I'm not a fashionable guy, but I've clearly picked up that there's change going on, and indeed what we're seeing pros wear. So look, I've seen a lot of change just in 3 years, but you've got the benefit of sort of a bit more sort of can I say legacy here? You've been watching golf a little bit longer. Talk to me about when did you start noticing golf changing in the context of what we're talking about?
I think it's strange, isn't it? Like how people say golf changes, and I think that attitudes can change, but I think like everything, time is a flat circle, isn't it? You know, I think a lot of the fashions that we're experiencing now are just sort of rehashes with a slightly different fabric of the stuff that we saw in the 90s, which, that was kind of around about the era that I got into golf. I played with my granddad, it was heavy leather bags, it was blades. That morphed into game improvement. The ball developed the way it did, the driver head developed the way it did. And sort of fashion moved on. It doesn't take much delving into the archives to realize that it wasn't that long ago people dressed atrociously, but that's all subjective, isn't it? And I think for me personally, the attitudes have changed as opposed to just a wholesale fashion, and as a result, the attitudes are quite linked. So you have those like legacy players, your boomers basically, who liked the status quo, who wanted to maintain the status quo, and we're seeing a little bit more of a shift of a younger generation getting into it. And so as a result, people are a lot more open to embracing like the fact that people just like different things. Ultimately, that's the thing that a lot of people are holding on to. It's they're looking to just sort of express themselves and not be sort of confined to a particular sort of style choice. But what we're seeing on tour and what we're seeing on the course, wider pants, drop shoulders, wider silhouettes of shirts, a kind of pushback to the polyester that we see and moving towards more peak kind of polo sort of textures on the shirts and whatnot. That's just what we saw 20, 30 years ago. But I'm all for it.
Yeah. Okay. So you're sort of saying that while there's a change going on, there's always been change going on, and it seems like this sort of recent moment. Is it fair to say that it's accelerating? Is that a fair comment? Do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the game is accelerating, and this kind of goes back to what we were saying before. Like the 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 game itself and its attitudes and its approaches, like I was saying, that's the thing that's changing. And so people are a lot more understanding in this day and age to the world around them. We have like instantaneous access to like different cultures, different countries, different foods, different fashions, different music. And as a result, people have just a greater understanding. Like if you're curious and you're not so closed-minded, then it's a really nice position to be in. It's a really nice headspace to be in. And so that for me is the thing that I notice more than anything. It's just people are a little bit more understanding of different cultures, different backgrounds, different tastes. And so they understand that it's not just going to be a simple status quo, and that to me is the big lean. That's the big change.
Is it a? I've kind of titled this first episode "The Anti-Golf Revolution." Is that a bit dramatic?
Um, I don't think it's necessarily dramatic by any stretch. I just think that one of the overriding sort of features of the game as a whole is that there's a new generation of people who don't necessarily subscribe to the norms that people automatically assume that golf have, and um, that combined with like a slightly older generation who understand and accept change. That's why we're sort of hitting this conversion point where everyone's just happy that the game is flourishing, the game is thriving, and everyone's there to enjoy it. I've said this many times. I like the etiquette and the respect of the game, and I like the lessons that the game teaches you. I think that is the one thing that golf shouldn't lose in terms of its identity.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is, what you wear is not reflective of you as a person. It might be an expression, but people should not be judged on the golf course or in the clubhouse based off what you wear.
How are you finding the more sort of casual street, off course, coming on course kind of transition, personally at your club, for example, or experience elsewhere?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because there are some of the legacy clubs. Like I'm fortunate enough to have played some of the best courses in the world, traveled with some of my best friends. And there are places that outwardly go to uphold certain traditions, like Muirfield behind me. It is my favorite course on the planet, bar none.
Yeah.
Spend time in the clubhouse, it's coat and tie. Now, um, I I respect the fact that that is their club, their rules, and it's what they predicate their identity around, holding on to certain traditions. But not all clubs are like that, and there are actually clubs like well documented Cleve Hill. That's a club that's forward thinking. Never in a million years did I think you would see t-shirts on a clubhouse or loose fit pants or. But at the same time, I didn't particularly expect people of like my generation to be carrying 30-year-old leather bags as a fashion statement or a flex. And so it's weird because golf itself it holds on to so many threads of its identity, doesn't it? And that's what I think. To me, the game is about the values of the game, what it teaches. wearing what you wear doesn't make you a better or a worse person or a better or a worse golfer. Now, there may be materials that might enhance that or claim to enhance that, but I'm yet to see that be proven. From a street style kind of perspective, I think the thing that I always noticed was not so much on the course, it was like off the course. In Manchester or and beyond, if I see someone walking in through the street in a Titleist hat, that is it still jars me a little bit. But people can
Yes,
wear
yes.
football shirts,
Yeah.
they can wear yoga gear, they can wear rugby shirts. No one looks twice. There are grown men that walk around with full football kits on match days in Manchester. Which, listen, you do you, brother, but that's just not for me.
Yeah.
But if someone wears golf attire, that is considered to be quite weird. I think that in itself is weird, and so what we as a brand try and do, and what other brands are trying to do as well, is basically like blur that line so it's deemed acceptable to wear golf affiliated style on the like in normal social environments. And that's the thing that I'm seeing more of, that is more of a hybrid. We know that Malvern are the absolute kings of that, but that they are simply part of they're the crest of the wave on a part of a trend, in my opinion, that is making sure that of all the people that shouldn't have to have two completely separate wardrobes for their passion and their fashion, it is golfers, in my opinion, and that's where I saw the gap, and that's where we sort of step in.
Yeah, I kind of go back to the reference there, Pat, to Malbon, and I think it was when Jason Day showed up. I don't know what it was, that the Thursday of the Masters 2024. It must have been in that, I don't know what it was, some sweater thing with, and he got told to sort of take it off. I kind of felt like that was kind of like a bit crazy, right? And then it sort of just kept going, more and more. Not just Jason, Melbourne signed Charlie Hull, and I think we've got Tommy Fleetwood's going through some transformation right now. I don't know what it is. I love Tommy. It seems like sort of the shackles are off, with sort of the corporate Nike stuff. As much as I love Nike as a brand, their attire is just, they've been lost in the woods, I think, for about a decade. But there's sort of these icons, professionals that we all look at. Is there a player at the moment anywhere in the world, any tour, that is kind of if we could sort of hold them up as a bit of an icon in this sort of this moment of challenging the tradition and stuffiness? Is there anyone that kind of you really look at and have a lot of respect for?
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? Because I've heard some people give fire out takes. On one hand, people refer to Jason Day as Thread King, and whether that's tongue in cheek, I don't know. But at the same time, it's fair to say that some of the stuff when he was with Adidas and then subsequently Nike didn't look great, and that's not that long ago, is it? Like it's not that long ago, and people do have short memories. But then is that fair to say, because he could have been, essentially he's getting told to wear whatever he's getting paid to wear, and so maybe this sort of agreement with Malvern, that's what that is. Or maybe it is an expression of what he wants to wear. I remember a couple of years ago when he just signed, he was at Kapalua, he wore those insanely baggy pants, and golf Twitter just lost its mind. At the end of the day, it's just some clothes, and I think Malvern in
Yeah.
particular are absolutely amazing at causing controversy, because controversy loves company. I think it looks sick. I can understand why someone doesn't think it looks sick, but I think, like you say before, speaking of spicy takes, I think a lot like Apple, I don't think Nike have innovated for the best part of 10 years. And I think that one of the reasons that they have done that is because they kind of got a little bit complacent. That's my take on it. I love Nike as a brand. Historically, it's always been my sort of favorite sports brand that I've leaned towards. But recently, I just think they have not been able to get out, and they can't see the wood through the trees. Some of the stuff that they've put on their players has been beyond parody, and it's hard to often work out where that line is drawn. Do these players dress badly, or are they just dressing badly because that's what they've been told to wear? But at the end of the day, like, money talks, and if you're getting paid that amount of money to wear what you're told, then does it affect your play? Didn't affect Tommy last year, does it? You could argue that he
No.
was, the second best player in the world towards the back end of the season. I don't think Rory gives the slightest bit of care or thought. I personally have always been of the train of thought that you look the part, you play the part, you feel the part. And so I spend time curating what I'm wearing before I go out for my Sunday round. I obviously have to think about the type of products that we're going to put out in the future for summer, for spring, for summer, and we're already working on the winter catalogue, and that's something that is an expression of what I and my new business partner has we're trying to sort of show off in a way. We're trying to show off our individual style. If people want to come on board with it, then that's absolutely fantastic. Um, it's just hard to essentially draw a line as to whether or not that's what I was saying. People are going to be wearing something because they're paid, or people are going to be wearing something because it's their style. I love. I don't know about you, Adam. I love what Tommy Fleetwood's doing at the moment.
Yeah.
When he was in the Middle East, I thought he looked amazing.
Yeah.
I think his obsession with pro shops is very cool. But I don't know if you've seen it this morning. He's been spotted at Riviera in Melbourne, and it wouldn't surprise me one jot
Right.
because he is
Right.
very much yeah, he is very, very much, in my opinion, perfect for Melbourne, which pains me to say it. But hopefully we'll get to a point where we'll be on tour players, but we will spend a very, very long time working that one out.
Yeah. I I want to talk about social media for a moment, and particularly Instagram. It's the most. I think it's the most visual of all. If I put Pinterest aside, um, when I started Northside Golf, I'd hardly touched Instagram, right? So it was kind of like an initiation by fire, and I am absolutely mind blown almost daily. New companies and new brands and new projects that find their way, into my feed, and it's fascinating to watch. There's some horrendous stuff out there. Now, that's very rich coming from me. I'm the most unfashionable guy around, but as an observer and a brand curator, there's just like, it's going to stop before it even starts. But there's some fantastic stuff going on there, and we've seen those amalgamations, through golf branding and other things like that. You sort of see, that they do a really good job at bundling up and curating all the latest new brands that come in. Not to mention the reincarnation of old brands like Head, who are right back in. Well, I don't know if they ever left. I'm not too sure. I only ever knew Head as sort of a tennis brand, but I stumbled upon their golf sort of page in Instagram a couple of days ago, and it's incredible looking stuff. So, how are you seeing Instagram? If we can focus on Instagram, how are you finding Instagram influence what you do, influence what you wear, what you sort of design and curate, and what's its overall influence and role in this kind of transformation that we're seeing?
That's a really good question. I have to be really tricky. I have to be really careful when I talk about this, because I think ultimately, like, Something that I really struggle with is I consume social media through two different lenses. So I consume it like as a passive consumer, just scrolling through the feed, which obviously I think it's all in everybody's interests to not do it quite as much as we do, but that's a whole different podcast. But then obviously I have to view it through the lenses to like marketing trends as well as clothing trends. That is it's the most valuable tool to us. Now we are not on TikTok, which I know from a brand perspective is considered not the best idea. That is a very, very deliberate decision right now because until we can bring the right people on board and have the right voices speaking on our behalf, it's a platform that is we're a small operation and it's a whole different platform and a whole different approach. And honestly, like I'm 41, there's a little part of me that feels like the collective, Gen Z TikTok audience just sort of like as soon as I log on, look at me and just point the fingers and be like, "What are you doing on this platform, you weirdo?" And I don't do enough sexy dances, so that's one thing. Now, I find it difficult as a brand owner looking at social media because ultimately it's hard to forget that we are very small. We are now a two-man operation. We're working with small budgets, and so we have to work out how to get our message across in a very different way. I'm just gonna put this out there. As much as Malvern are kind of to me, they're the top of the tier in our space. I don't think anybody does content better than Manners, and I don't even
Mm,
think it's
mm,
close. Every
yeah.
single time they create content, whether it be filler content just to keep relevance in the feed, whether it be explaining and demonstrating the new collections, without fail, I curl my fists up with jealous rage at how good they are at doing that. Props to them for that. It is unbelievable how good they are. They
Mm,
have worked out how to keep your attention and maintain it, and they work out how to make people like me view every single post. But they have a massive budget,
yeah.
massive, and ultimately um, their sort of view about how they get their message across, the lens in which they can do that, and their kind of the way in which they can create that top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel content is a lot um, easier, I suppose, to say because they've got more room to play with. Now that's not to discredit them in any way, shape, or form because you've got to think of the idea, but I think that they are light years ahead of absolutely everyone else. And in what I would do to have a 20 minutes in that room as a fly on the wall, I just think they are just fantastic. From a sales and a marketing perspective, we kind of it's the most valuable trend to us. The meta platforms is super valuable to us, both through kind of top of funnel content that we put on the grid, and then retargeting ads on the meta platform as a whole. But I think it's like going back to what I was saying. I think it's very difficult to remember that we're all at different sort of positions and at different roads. Manners were where we were however many years ago, and they went through an entire brand and essentially had to like sort of acclimate to teaching and telling a completely different message to what they did 18 months prior, when by all accounts and from the looks of it, it was a very different aesthetic. And I think that um, the content market is so saturated, and I think we're all so drained of hooks and jump cuts and storytelling and characters and world building and all of these things, that I think that we kind of like lose sight quite easily about how important it is to remember that we've created a product, people like that product, and so we should kind of keep on going. um I think it's important to use social media for inspiration, but comparison is the thief of joy, especially in our industry. That's more and more golf adjacent street style brands and so on and so forth. They're cropping up left, right, and centre, It was only last night. I'll let you into an insight into what it's like running a clothing company. It was only last night that we were DM'd by someone who um, essentially gave the most brutal, backhanded, massively insulting compliment, I think it was, towards our brand. And it just so happens that they're starting another brand in the space. And it was almost like they bought a product off us as a means to see what the competition is like and then kind of like politely be crazy, crazy rude.
Yeah,
It's a strange
yeah,
place, social media. None of it is real. None of it is real, and
yeah,
we try and remind ourselves of that all the time.
yeah. Pat, we're gonna dive deeper into episode 2 on the fashion front, but I think to sort of wrap this first episode up, just more broadly around the rebellion, the transformation, the change. Um, I, I've taken a liking to golf inspired um, goods and products and things like that, right? So this image behind me by Low Draw, um, you know, it's it's a handmade lino print, for example. So the artist is actually a leather maker by trade, but also a golf sicko, and so if we just park fashion and apparel for a moment, um, I'm getting super excited by these other golf inspired sort of goods and products that we're seeing prop up. Are you observing the same? Have you got views on that as well?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I don't know if you remember this. It might have been like 2 years ago, maybe 18 months ago. Quiet Golf, they did
Yes.
an incense holder that was in the
Yeah.
shape of a Quiet Please paddle. I can safely say that that is objectively the sickest thing I've ever seen. Like
Yeah.
it was so cool and it was so simple. And I think that's something that I love about golf is because it's very much a if you know, you know. Now, I don't know if they sold 10 or 10,000 of those, but I wanted one so badly. Um, and it's strange. I'm not normally like susceptible to those kind of like urges. I love a pro shop haul, like absolutely. But little gimmicks and gadgets, they progressively started to fill, the workshop. Like I love prints. This is a Muirfield print. It's a line drawing of all the holes and the directions and the winds. Like we've got. I don't know if you can see this. We've got our mutual friend Dane from Matchstick Golf. I've got some bits up here. I think that people have started to come around to the idea that to be expressive and to be passionate about sport and about the game, it's not a prerequisite just to immediately go into clothing. And I think that that is something that is actually quite unique about golf. And I think the reason that that happens is because golf kind of ignites this weird part of your brain. Like you're obsessed about it. If you play badly, you want to go out and fix it. If you play well, you want to go out and keep it. You want to go out again and keep it going. And it's so cool to see how that like how that works with people and how it does that to people. I think it's amazing, absolutely amazing. Like little things like this, like it's a stubby cooler from the Open. I don't need it. It's just pitched on the wall, but I saw
Yeah.
it and I had to have it.
we
So
don't need we don't need half the stuff that we've got. So
no, man. Like I don't need another head cover. I don't need another bag tag. I don't need more tees. I don't need more ball markers. But I see it and that's sick, and I have to have it.
I know, I know. Well, Pat, look, that is episode 1 of Archived. in the books. Looking forward to the months ahead and additional episodes for those following and watching. Archived.golf on Instagram. You can also find us at Northside Golf _. Pat, where are we finding you on Instagram?
Mainly you can find me at Concrete Links Co, but I do have Patrick _ Concrete Links Co. It's a bit dormant at the moment, but we'll get there. Too many channels to focus on.
Brother, look forward to chatting with you next episode. Thanks so much.
Right on, mate. See you later.